Welcome to growthtofreedom.com, the show that brings you inspiration, transformation, and leadership. We're helping you connect the dots, see the blind spots, and get unstuck so you can go out and create more growth, more sales, more leads, more profits. More importantly, so you can go out there and have a bigger impact, a bigger reach, and make a bigger contribution. Is that what you want? Like in these times right now, in these turbulent times, is that what you want? If that's what you want, you are going to love today's episode, right? In crisis, how do you stay connected to the idea of being curious and moving forward? Well, if that intrigues you at all and you want some instant tips that you can walk away with to stay in that sweet spot, that zone of genius, of curiosity, to pull yourself through, to move forward, you're going to love our guest expert today. Her name is Dr. Diane Hamilton. We got a chance to meet about 5 years ago. She's the founder and CEO of Tonerra, the co-founder of DIMA Innovations, which is a consulting and media business. She's nationally syndicated as a radio host, keynote speaker, the former MBA Program Chair at the Forbes School of Business. Like, what do you think the qualifications are to be there, right? I was blessed enough to be on her show some time ago. She's interviewed thousands and thousands of people, well-connected. She has a best-selling book called Cracking the Curiosity Code, the key to unlocking your human potential. Do you want to unlock your human potential? Well, you're going to want to stick. If you don't want to unlock that human potential, then go, I don't know, watch Netflix or something like that. However, if you want to unlock your potential to take to that next level, then you're going to love what we're going to talk about that. There's so much here, Diane, with your background. So welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Well, thank you, Dan. Wow, that sounds great when you say it that way.
Awesome. Well,
here.
It's easy. So I want to dive right into it, Diane.
Okay.
Like, you have such a diverse, like, fascinating background, like, because we've talked a lot about different things you've done. Your sweet spot is curiosity. Like, so, like, why are you doing what you're doing? What's this whole thing around curiosity?
You know, I've done a lot of things, like you said. I have a background in sales and marketing and education, and I just everything from working in pharmaceuticals to real estate to lending to you name it, I've done it. And I was always interested in the next thing. What can I learn now? What can I do now? And when I created my radio show, I did that after I was the MBA Program Chair at Forbes. I had left, and when I was working there, I had interviewed a lot of people, just set them up for our speaker events, I should say, and then had a chance to interview Ken Fisher, the billionaire behind Fisher Investments.
Yep.
I thought he was so interesting and fascinating, and I really enjoyed it. I'd never really interviewed anybody, and here I throw myself in with the billionaire genius Ken Fisher, right? And it was exciting and fun to just talk to him. And when I left there, I thought, well, that was kind of fun, and I never really thought more about it. But then I was going to be more involved in my speaking and consulting in that business, and I started to become interviewed by more people. And one of the first people who interviewed me at that point had a nationally syndicated radio show. I thought, well, that sounds kind of cool. How'd you get that? And we started talking, and I thought, well, I want to start interviewing people because I was really curious about just what I had learned. We could learn from everybody. I learned so much from Ken and everybody else. And I thought, well, this is fun. So I started doing that. And as I was interviewing people, I thought, well, these people are super curious. I mean, they want to know everything about everything. I remember interviewing Naveen Jain, and he just read everything, and he was just constantly learning the next thing, who I met at the Genius Network, which I know you were part of. And people like that were very interesting to me because they just explored and they just question everything. And then, in the meantime, I'm still teaching all these courses. I've taught thousands of online business courses for multiple universities throughout the years. And my students weren't as curious, some of them would be like, just give me the fish, don't teach me to fish kind of mentality.
Yep,
And I'm like, no, I want you to want to learn to fish. And so I thought, I'm going to write a book about curiosity. So I looked out there and I looked to see what was available for determining what kept people from being curious, because I thought you got to figure out what's holding you back to fix it. And I was stunned that there weren't any assessments out there. They all just told you if you're curious or not. And I thought, well, what if you're not? Then what do you
Right.
I was curious. So that led to my book and my assessment that I created to help determine the things that keep people from being curious. And that's my main focus at Tonerra, and my speaking and all my other stuff I do. It's all tied in. So basically I'm curious, I learn things, and then I share it with everybody else.
That's amazing. And I have so many directions I want to take this. So like, let's back up for a second. Someone might be listening, like we're in like one of the biggest crises in history,
Yeah.
right? Or correction, if you will, in history, probably, probably somewhere in a range between 1929 and the 2011 situation. So like, what is curiosity? Number one, let's start there. What is curiosity?
Well, originally, I was just thinking of curiosity and wanting to explore things you just never explored before. And then as I started to look into it, I started to think it's really about getting out of status quo thinking for organizations. And I often share a story when I give a talk about, I don't know if you saw the National Geographic research about this, where they rang a bell in a doctor's office. Have you heard of this research?
Share it.
Okay, well, this woman went in for an eye doctor appointment thinking that that's all she's there for, but she was actually part of this thought experiment to see how people just go along with the status quo. And every once in a while they rang this bell, and everybody around her who were actors, she thought were patients, would just stand up and sit down without any explanation at all. And she kind of looks around, kind of befuddled, what's going on. And
Yeah.
about the third time, she gets up and sits down with them. And she continues to do that. And they thought, well, let's take everybody out of the room to see what she'll do. So they call people back one at a time as if they're patients, and eventually she's alone in the room, and they ring the bell, and she stands up and she sits down without even having them there, without knowing why. And they go, well, let's put real people in with her and see what they do. And so they started, having other people who think they're going in for an eye exam. And the first guy sitting next to her watches her get up and sit down with the bell the first time he's in there. And he says, well, why did you do that? And she said, well, everybody else was doing it. I thought I had to. So the bell rings, and then what do you think he does? And everybody else who they add, and people just follow along with what everybody else is doing without questioning why, without questioning why not, without questioning whatever. And that's what we see in organizations. And I started to see that curiosity is really about exploring, feeling safe to ask questions and present solutions and ask why not. Just having this culture that gets away from the status quo, because we all know what Marshall Goldsmith says, right? What got you here won't get you there. Yes. And I agree with that.
Now, speaking of that mindset, right? So like you mentioned Joe Polish and Genius Network, which is how we got connected, right?
Yeah.
So Joe, my perception of Joe is he's probably the most curious person I've ever met. Like, frankly, I've been around him for a lot of years, and his mind just, is always looking like what's next, what's better, what isn't a different way to do this, what's a different look, etc. And so is this a DNA trait? Is it something we're born with? Is it something we develop? Speak to that a little bit.
Well, we're all born with curiosity. There's the curiosity gene. The Max Planck Institute coined that term. If you think about it, animals, everybody, we all have to be curious. If you're a bird and you're flying around a bush with berries and you don't have enough curiosity to look for another bush, what happens when you run out of berries? You're too bad, right? So you have to be curious. You have
go find some. I need my berries. Give me some berries.
Right. We need the berries. So we need to explore, and we're all born with high levels of curiosity, all kids. I remember getting on a bus in Vail, and this little cute Hispanic girl and her mother got on the bus, and in the back you could hear her with her mother going, "Por qué, mama? Por qué?" 100 times, which means why, mom, why? And we no matter what language, no matter what, we're all kids at that point asking why. And as cute as I thought it was, you could see the mother was like, heard enough of it, and that's what happens. As we get older, you can only ask so much sometimes, where it's hard for everybody to answer every single question. And if you look at the research, we peak around age 5 on our levels of curiosity. And I mean, a lot of great talks about this. Sir Ken Robinson has a great TED talk. George Land has a great talk, and they focus on creativity to some extent. They're tied in, but you look at the peak of creativity and curiosity. It's around age 5, and then it just tanks as we get to be older. And that was what I was curious about, is like, okay, so how do we stop that, or what is causing it so that we can reverse it?
Now, speaking of that, as you're listening or watching right now, like, what would it be worth to you to be able to know how to stimulate it immediately? Also, how to slow it down if you've got too much shiny object syndrome around curiosity, and develop that happy medium, if you will. Or maybe you have kids. Maybe you're a parent, you have kids, and and I want to ask you about this for my kids, because one of our kids is highly curious. One of my other kids in the same house, same social, all the dynamics being similar and a lot of the similar stimulation. One of my children is my daughter. She's not as curious as my son, which is just so interesting. So I want to get into that. And so if you're wondering that, maybe for your team, maybe for you personally, and most importantly, how to maximize your human potential, how curiosity can help you do that. Well, when we come back, we're going to take a deeper dive. Diane's going to share some strategies you can put in place to be able to use curiosity to maximize your human potential, give you some steps to take. That and a whole lot more coming up right after this on growth2freedom.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of growth2freedom.com. Are you struggling to get a steady flow of new clients every day, or maybe hit a plateau or hit a wall in growing your business? Well, let's help you solve this problem today. Let's review your business and have a conversation. You can do that for free today at breakthroughstrategycall.com. That's breakthroughstrategycall.com. In addition, if you're looking for a simple way to implement some of what we've been talking about in today's episode, then I want to encourage you to get our free small business toolkit. You can get that at activate.breakthrough3x.com. That's activate.breakthrough3x.com. If you'd like access to the special resources and all the show notes for this special episode, make sure to visit growth2freedom.com. Welcome back to growth2freedom.com. Now, by the way, thanks for making us part of your day. If you want to come back to this episode, by the way, you can go to growth2freedom.com. If you never want to miss an episode, maybe connect through it, through different platforms, go to growth2freedom.com/subscribe. That's growth2freedom.com/subscribe. Diane, I'm fascinated by the idea of curiosity. And I'm thinking of my own kids. I'm a little selfish here right now. So, and maybe through my kids, as you're listening or watching, maybe it's a team member you have, maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your kids, maybe it's extended family, whatever the case might be. Ideally, you'll learn. So my son, my wife and I were talking about my son here recently. And, we got him involved in sports, and he plays quarterback. And he's always asking, like, why do we do this? Mm-hmm. And why do we do it this way? Like, he's just constantly like wanting to understand the 360 view of this, right? And like, he'll even sometimes go and do it a little bit different than what he's being shared, which I just love. Frankly, as a dad, I kind of love this independent trait he's got. My daughter is independent and strong. However, I don't see, and we don't view the curiosity from her as much on the outside anyway. Maybe internally she does. But, so I want to get your perspective, like, same home, same encouragement, same kind of social dynamics, yet one seems to be more curious than the other by quite an exponential factor. Can you speak to that a little bit? What's the difference? What can we do?
Well, anybody who's had more than one child will tell you they are completely different right from day one. I have 2 daughters, 17 months apart, complete opposites. And, anybody who's taken DISC or Myers-Briggs or whatever tests, you realize that you have certain innate preferences. And I look at those as kind of think of being right or left-handed. You prefer to write with your right hand, not that you can't write with your left hand, but it's a little more challenging, or vice versa if you're left-handed. So we all have a certain amount of preferences for how we obtain information. Think of the introvert-extrovert differences, and Susan Cain's book, Quiet, was such an impactful book because introverts look at how they want to do things differently than extroverts. So we get value from everybody in society from just different perspectives, but we're all impacted to some extent by the factors that I found that inhibit curiosity. Though not everybody's going to be equally as curious from day one, just like everybody's not going to be equally extroverted or introverted or any aspect of our personality. And what is interesting to me, I don't know how old are your kids?
14 and 12. My daughter's 14, my son's 12.
I saw my kids when they were little and how they turned out when they were older was completely different than you can even tell what they're gonna, do. For one thing, my oldest was, completely influenced at the age of 15 by a cruise we had gone on, where all these girls were on board celebrating their 15th birthday from South America. And that made her interested in just every kind of language. Now she speaks 4 languages, and she went off in a completely different realm than I would have ever expected. Where my youngest, when she was little, she was kind of goofy, and I always thought, oh, I hope she's going to be okay. Kind of, she's like, she passed me like I was standing still, super businesswoman. You know what I mean? You cannot tell what they're going to do at certain ages, I've found, at least for my children. They both surpassed anything I ever thought, but they have totally different levels of curiosity. My youngest, no interest at all in languages. My oldest wants to learn every language in the world. I don't know where the language thing came from. Just the cruise, maybe. You just don't know what's going to spark certain things. So that's kind of the environmental aspect of what influences us. And I found 4 things influence curiosity. When we get into that, I think environment is a big one.
So speak to that. What are some of the things that hold people back or get in the way of development of that curiosity? And what should we do different?
Well, it was really challenging to me to create the Curiosity Code Index because, as I said, nobody else had done it. Yep. And as I started to hire experts, psychometric statisticians and different people to give me advice on how to write assessments, they all kept writing the same assessment. They all kept measuring whether you're curious or not. And I go, no, that's not what I'm trying to do. So it took me years of research, and I had to teach myself factor analysis again, which is not my favorite. And really got into how to figure out what these 4 things were. And it turned out there's 4 factors, and the acronym is FATE, F-A-T-E, and they stand for fear, assumptions, technology, and environment. And basically, what I started out doing was putting a question thread in LinkedIn to ask people what held them back, because I was kind of curious right before I even got into this assessment. And so a lot of people were giving me fear-based things, which I was really expecting. But what I wasn't expecting were some of these other things, a little bit like technology, or just the assumptions. You don't think about it, but the assumptions are really the voice in your head, the things that you tell yourself. And environment, as we're talking about, that cruise, it was a huge impact of what made my daughter want to go off and learn all these languages. But it can be a negative impact a lot of times. Think about when, maybe your kids have 2 different kinds of teachers at school.
Right.
You don't know. It's everybody that they've ever come into contact with. So, maybe it's easier just to go through each one at a time. Let's start with fear. Fear was a huge impactor. If you think about how many meetings have you sat in where you think of a question you want to ask, and you're thinking, I'm the only one. I don't want to look stupid if I ask this question. So I'm like, hey, Dan, why don't you ask? So Dan looks stupid, right? I don't want to ask that question. Yeah. So, that's how we are. We've had somebody in the past look at us like, really, did you ask that? Or, something has happened that makes us not want to do that. So fear.
And then let me speak to that a little bit too, right? Because, now, like when we were kids, it was different. Like we didn't have all this crazy social media. So it would be like in a classroom, in a kind of collapsed environment, like almost an incubator or vacuum. And we could get bullied a little or kind of, made fun out of or whatever. But now it seems exponential. Like that happens in class, and then like there's photos all over the school. It's all social media. It's on all the different channels. How do you feel that that's impacting, like either inhibiting it or, helping expand it? Like what could be done on either side of that?
It's really challenging. You know, some of these factors overlap. So there's fear and environment. And, you know, I kind of lump social media and some of that stuff into environment, but the fear of that happening is a huge thing. I know, I mean, I hesitate all the time posting things. I saw somebody today who's a top, well thought of speaker posted something on Twitter, meant very kindly, you know, so let's pray for everybody or something, and just it got slammed for using the word pray, you know what I mean? And his intentions were really good. And with kids, you know, you don't know, their intentions are good, you know, you're not trying to upset somebody, but people are really sensitive now, and it's a very tough time. That's why I mean, my focus is on, you know, the workplace, but I'd like to see this in schools and other places as well. Think about what we're talking about in terms of the overall culture of what we find acceptable, of how we treat people. And in the workplace, I work with large organizations, Novartis, Verizon, they're trying to create this culture of curiosity. And to do that, leaders, teachers, parents, we have to realize it comes from above, that we have to emulate what we would like to see. And if we don't do that, and if it's do what I say, not what I do, it's not going to have the same impact, obviously. So
looking at fear, assumptions, tech, and environment, right? What do we do, Diane? So, you know, we've got these potential roadblocks, right, that get in our way. The voices, the things, the places, right? The places we will go, Dr. Seuss. Like, what can we do to stimulate and encourage a culture of curiosity? Like, what are some action steps that our viewers, our listeners can take to be able to do that, to plant those right seeds for themselves? And then also, like you're saying, lead by example for, you know, whoever they influence.
You know, there's so many great leaders. I mean, Xander Lurie was on my show from SurveyMonkey. They definitely embrace a level of curiosity within their company because that's what they do. I mean, they're asking questions for everything that they do in their surveys. There's a lot of things you can do. At Novartis, I know that they do 100 hours a year is their expectation. They'd like to have people learn something new and train, and they pay for that. So whether it is, you know, taking an Audacity or, you know, some kind of a class online to learning, sharing about a book, or doing whatever it is that they have all these different videos and archives of things that they can use. They get certain amount of credit for doing certain things. They embrace it. They had a big curiosity wall. This is what I'm curious about now. And they all share that. At Verizon, I was in New York before all the crisis a month ago. We created videos for in small bite videos for people within the company that shares, like, this is what the importance of curiosity. And then they take, along with what I was saying as an expert, they took examples of employees who went above and beyond and overcame things that kept them back from being curious. And they, did like Elon Musk, where your parent maybe told you you can't do anything, but then look what I could do, kind of thing.
Yep.
So they shared like positive examples. And I think that companies really see the value. I've talked to, you know, CHRO, groups, the C-level HR people. I've talked to just everybody within organizations that have that focus on culture, that they really see the value in this. They've seen Francesca Gino's HBR articles. They've seen my research. They've seen a lot of other research. And they know they want things. I try to explain it like baking a cake. Okay, so when I'm talking to leaders and talking to parents or whoever you're talking to about how to develop curiosity, or how important it is. Let's look at it. What happens when you bake a cake? Your outcome you want is a cake, right?
Yep.
So you're mixing their ingredients. Your ingredients might be flour and oil and eggs and whatever your ingredients are. You're mixing them together. You stick them in a pan. You put it in the oven. What happens? Well, if you don't turn on the oven,
you got to turn it on,
right? You don't get anything. So the problem is, in the workplace, we're not turning on the oven. And the oven, let's look at those things again. The end product instead of a cake is productivity and money, basically, right? Is what we want.
Yep.
The ingredients are drive, motivation, innovation, engagement, all the things that we know we want to help make this better. But nobody turns on the oven. Nobody, and that spark is curiosity. So that's what we need to be working on.
That's amazing. Now, like I'm thinking about this from a lot of different levels. So your two daughters.
Okay.
Right?
Uh-huh.
If we ask them, hey, how did your mom inspire and spark curiosity in you? What do you think your daughters would, each of them?
I think they both would say a couple things I do. I learned from my father. We used to play school at the dinner table when I was a kid a lot. Like we would ask, my dad would ask us a question based on our level or our age. Like I was 5 years younger than my sister and 8.5 years younger than my brother. So my questions were much easier than what they had. But if you missed your question, you'd be a third of a hippopotamus or something. And then by the time if you became a whole hippopotamus, they'd tickle you or whatever it is, that would be the punishment. But it was an exploration of learning things that you really didn't know anything about. And he'd always ask me stuff, crazy stuff that I probably wouldn't know, like sports or something, that I wasn't interested in or whatever, just to kind of give me different things. And I did a lot of that with my kids. I did a lot of exploration. I let them pick certain things, but I had an expectation that they would like maybe pick a couple sports. You can do whatever ones you like, but I'd like you to do some exercise based things, but with maybe some arts kinds of things. And I kind of gave them a real well-rounded experience because as I just said before, I'm not crazy about sports, and they were in baseball, or softball. I made sure that they tried things, even if I didn't like it, especially with food, because I'm really picky. I would make food I hated, and then I'd like drop it in my lap when they weren't looking so that they would try things. And they're really good eaters, I'll tell you, but I'm not. Because I wanted them to have that experience, even if I didn't like it. Yep. And I know in my family, that was one thing, that it was all sports. It was all one very tunnel vision sometimes. And I thought when I got older, I started finding things that I really liked. And I'm like, why didn't we do this? This is so much more fun. I liked rock climbing, but I didn't like tennis or whatever it was, and I think letting kids not have to be within that one thing that you like, that you think is so important only is really critical.
That is such great advice. And as you're listening or watching right now, there's so much wisdom here that Diane is sharing with you. Diane, where can people go? Like, I mean, we've just scratched it. There's 100 questions I want to ask, but for sake of time, like if people, are interested in you've piqued their curiosity about curiosity and, going deeper and tapping into human potential, not only themselves, but their teams and more. Where can people go to learn more about what you're up to and that sort of thing?
Well, anybody who wants to become certified to give the Curiosity Code Index can do so. They get 5 hours of SHRM recertification credit, and they can teach their organizations, and a lot of HR professionals and consultants want to do that. But you can also just take the assessment as an individual if you want, and it's all at curiositycode.com. But to reach me, you can also get to the curiosity stuff from my main website, which is drdianehamilton.com. And on all the social media areas, you can find me at Dr. Diane Hamilton. Doctor is just DR, and then DIANEHAMILTON. You can find me everywhere.
So if you're looking for a way to use curiosity, to leverage curiosity, to tap into your human potential, your team's potential, to work with your kids better, your family better, your organization, I encourage you to go to curiositycode.com. That's curiositycode.com. Or go over to her site at drdianehamilton.com. That's drdianehamilton.com. Also, by the way, you might be driving right now, or you might be on a treadmill right now. You can come back to this episode at growthtofreedom.com and type in the information. And actually, we'll have all the links that we're talking about right in the show notes, the resources, the notes, these links, and a whole lot more. Now, as we wind this down, Diane, what is something I should have asked you that we didn't get a chance to cover yet?
What I'm working on next, maybe, huh? My next book is on perception, and I created another assessment, the Perception Power Index, and I'm co-authoring that book with Dr. Maya Zelahich, which is we work together at the Forbes School of Business. I'm the former MBA Program Chair, and now she's the current MBA Program Chair there. And we were very interested in perception and how to get along in the workplace in terms of looking at it from a combination of IQ, EQ for emotional intelligence, CQ for curiosity quotient, and another CQ for cultural quotient, kind of combined into one thing.
That is amazing. And
Yeah.
well, can people go learn more about that? And you've got some things that you're updating on your site at Dr. Diane Hamilton?
They can look on my site. You know, right now there's a lot of good articles about perception I've written on Forbes as well. So, you know, you can search Dr. Diane Hamilton perception, find articles everywhere.
And again, if you're looking to use curiosity, leverage curiosity to tap into your human potential, go check out what she's doing at curiositycode.com. That's curiositycode.com. What are 1 to 3 action steps, Diane, that you would hope our listeners, our viewers would take from our time today?
You know, I have these little things I'm going to show you because I think they're really great that I use in my training. If you can see, you can write down some of the things that hold you back from fear. Just write down some of these things that hold you back and create actionable steps to overcome things for fear, for assumptions, things that you're telling yourself that maybe make you not want to try something because you think I don't like it. And technology, are you over or underutilizing it? And what kind of basic information could you learn that you haven't? And then your environment. Who has told you things that maybe we all need to be doctors maybe in this family, or maybe we all need to do certain things that maybe you don't really like to do and you never really thought about it. Ask yourself what kinds of things are going through your mind. Write down what things are holding you back, and then you can create smart kind of SWOT analysis of a personal SWOT, how to overcome those threats and weaknesses, and develop an action plan.
And there you go. I encourage you. We're going to post the questions on the site so you can get those. And what is holding you back? What is holding you back from the perspective of fear, right? And what is the impact of that's holding you back? Like, what if you don't make the shift? Like, what's it costing you in freedom, in growth, in peace of mind, right? In being able to have the impact you want to have, to be able to go out and do the things that you really want to do, or around assumptions or technology, or, the environment. Like, how is it impacting you? And what if like one domino that you tip over as a result of the strategies here and or going through her resources tips over 100 that transforms you to unlock your human potential, to unlock your team's potential? What would that be worth to you? So I encourage you, go check out her resources. Go to curiositycode.com. That's curiositycode.com. A couple last things, Diane, I'm curious. Growing up, it sounds like you had a really strong family culture, a supportive one. You brought up sports. So what was your least favorite sport as a kid?
Well, I was a swimmer, so that was my most favorite. I didn't really like going to the tennis classes, I have to say. I wish I would have. My sister was state tennis champ. My brother was a coach at a country club of tennis. I mean, everybody was into tennis, and I think I was too young to get on board with it at an early time. I think I would like it at this point, but now my joints don't like it so much. So some things you can't do when you get older. But I think I never was really a big fan of team sports. I liked individual, like running. I don't think I would have been great on basketball and baseball and those kinds of things, because I liked the speed factor, the swimming, that type of thing. But I've really liked rock climbing in my old age, and I can bowl pretty well.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
I got a 276 once, and I'm holding on to that.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, once.
That is good. That is good. Now, who was the first early